What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide.
Welcome to our webcast, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to talk a little bit about something very important. Albert Einstein once said, it doesn't matter if you know all the answers, but where you know to look for them. And so we're glad you found our little webcast today. We're going to talk about something very, very important, something we're very passionate about the human body, about health, about what we're doing wrong, that we think we're doing right, and how we can change things and make our lives a little bit better and live a healthier, longer life. We're going to get started right away. Is dying from old age normal? Now, if you answer yes to this question, you have to think about something. Did you know that over 700,000 people in the United States every year die of heart disease? That over 500,000 people a year in the United States die of various cancers? That over 60,000 people every year are dying of type 2 diabetes? How about this? Did you know that between 60 and 100 people are dying every single day in the United States from taking perfectly, legally prescribed prescription drugs? Does that surprise anyone? Now, between 1913 and 2013, we were able to increase the lifespan in the United States by 30 years. We went from 50 to 80, as you can see. And that's quite a long time. But if I asked anyone, without qualifiers, without caveats, would you want to live to be 100 years old? Think about that. Without caveats, would you want to live to be 100 years old? Who would say yes? I don't think many people would say yes, because most 100-year-old people that you know probably aren't in the best health, are they? So what's the difference between a 100-year-old, let's say, and a 25-year-old? Chances are the 100-year-old isn't in great health, if you know any. Doesn't have the best mental acuity, the best libido, right? These are people in a real decline. And so what we're talking about here is that we've increased the lifespan quite a bit, but what about the health span? Now we're going to talk about restorative medicine. Restorative medicine, it says it's a truly new way to think, look, and manage your health. But we think it's also an old way, hearkening back to some things that we used to do in medicine, combined with some new technologies that we've come across and some new ways to look at the body. Eliminate many conditions. Now, I talked about some conditions at the top of the broadcast, did I not? We talked about heart disease. We talked about cancers. We talked about diabetes. We also talked about prescription drugs, eliminating many prescriptions. Now, in case you didn't know who Dr. Dzugan is a world-renowned heart surgeon. He invented 3 apparatuses used in cardiovascular surgery. He's a university professor, a published cancer center research scientist, a multi-title author. He's written 5 books with the 6th book on the way, and he's a trainer and mentor to physicians worldwide in the area of restorative medicine. So here we have what I was going to call the circle of life, but since I don't want to get sued by the Lion King people or the Elton John's people, we're going to call it the Wheel of Wellness. Now, as you can see, the Wheel of Wellness has listed energy, physique, ailments, medication, pain, focus, and libido. And from inside out, the circle is ranked from 1 to 10. If you were to rank yourself along these areas, putting a dot on each one in each of these areas, how would you rank? Now, before you answer that question, think about how you would have ranked when you were 25 years old. Who would have had a smoother ride, let's say, on the Wheel of Wellness? What is aging? It's a complicated question, but we're going to address it in a couple of different ways. All of us are familiar with what is chronological aging. That's the number of days you've been on the planet Earth divided by 365. That's how many years old you are. Now, if you're watching this presentation and you don't know how old you are chronologically, this presentation won't help you. Now, this guy has been on the Earth for 58 years. But at the biological level, at the cellular level, he's only 44 years old. Now, he may have had a leg up on some people genetically. He may have had enough money to take care of himself with great health care. He may have a great diet and exercise regimen. He may not have a very high-stress life. Whatever he's doing it right. Now, I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I'd want to be able to bet that the chronological age horse would be out in front. But unfortunately, due to the stresses of life, sometimes the biological age horse gets out in front. Now, if you want to limit the number of years you're going to be here chronologically, of course, getting that biological age horse out in front is probably one of the best ways to do it. What can we do about that? Now, this guy's an interesting case as well because he's exactly the opposite of the guy that we just saw. He's only been on the Earth for 44 years, but at the biological level, at the cellular level, he's 58 years old. Now, he might not have had that leg up genetically the other guy had. He might not have enough money to afford great health care. He might not have a great diet and exercise regimen, and he might have a high-stress life. Whatever he's doing it wrong, and he doesn't look very happy about it. Physiology. Now, what is physiology? We define physiology as the science of living organisms, their parts, and how they work together. Now, acquired errors of physiology is something different. We like to divide disease into 4 different sections, 4 different types of kinds of disease. And so what we've got here is infectious diseases. Okay, these are diseases like you catch a cold. We also have trauma. If you work in a factory and you get your arm cut off by a machine, or you get in a car wreck and you lose a leg, that's trauma. We have congenital diseases. These are diseases that you are born with. So cystic fibrosis, hemophilia. But acquired errors of physiology, this is a different manner of disease that you might not have heard of before. These are things that go wrong in your physiology over the passage of time. See, folks, we all started out the same. As you can see, these beautiful children if they had the same haircuts and clothing, we wouldn't know which ones were boys or girls. And as you can see, the hormone switch is switched off. In fact, when we were all children, we liked the same type of beer. Just kidding. Actually, you can see they have the same hip and shoulder width here. But then hormones kick in. As you can see, the switch has been turned on. And there are very marked differences between men and women. Now, between the ages of 20 and 29, we have optimal health. We have unlimited energy, unlimited power. We feel like we're never going to die. This is 95% of the population. And then something happens, unfortunately. About age 40, there's a visible change to people, right? And Dr. Dzugan has a presentation, and in that presentation, Dr. Dzugan says this. At some point, you look down on yourself from the top, and you can't see your feet. In front of your eyes, only your stomach is present. With all the problems in life, here is one more. Now we are cramped behind the steering wheel, and sex turns into a sumo battle. That's what Dr. Dzugan says. Our hair begins to gray. Our skin begins to wrinkle. And as we age, we begin to experience a decrease in our quality of life. We're fatigued. We have loss of memory and mental clarity. We have loss of strength and energy. In short, we are not the same person we were between the ages of 20 and 29. Age 50, life cycle complete, the hormone switch has been turned off. Now remember, there was a graph just a few minutes ago that said between 1913 and 2013, we increased the lifespan by 30 years. So back in 1913, when you turned age 50, It didn't matter if the hormone switch was turned off because you were going to die anyway. Now we're living 30 years beyond that point. What does that mean for you? We're going to talk about that. What happens when you have deficiencies and imbalances in your physiology? Now, as you can see here, we have some dominoes, and there's a domino effect. The dominoes are falling. We have testosterone, estrogen, DHEA, progesterone, the list goes on. But the question, what happens when you have deficiencies and imbalances in your physiology is important, because we contend that this is what happens. As you can see, we have a list of acquired errors of physiology, as we like to call them. We see cancer there, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, arthritis, memory loss, andropause, fatigue, the list goes on. These are the types of things that happen when you have deficiencies and imbalances in your physiology as you age. Now we're going to use a tire analogy because most people know about tires and about driving cars, right? So here we have 4 tires. As you can see, the tires are filled to their optimal level of air and they're in balance with each other. How hard is it, folks, to drive when you have 3 flat tires? Pretty hard. How hard is it to drive when you have 2 flat tires? Still pretty difficult. Now, if you have 1 flat tire, you could probably get to the service station, but the point is, you're not driving as well as you could be. You need to have all 4 tires at their optimal level of air and in balance with each other so that you can run like this beautiful car. Now, it's a crude analogy, but it works for the human body. So how does one fix these errors in physiology? Good question. We're going to talk about that as well. We're going to use a tree analogy to sort of address what happens as we age. Now, you see this tree here is beautiful, and if this tree were a human being, it would be between the ages of 20 and 29 years old. See, we have a strong root system getting nutrients up from the soil. That goes up through the bark of the tree, which looks strong. We have strong branches, a strong trunk, and beautiful green leaves. This is a healthy tree. Now, this tree looks a little bit different, doesn't it? This tree would be 50 years old if it were a human being. Now, what happened? The root system looks like there's been some degradation there. It's no longer getting the nutrients up from the soil the way it used to. Consequently, the trunk and the bark look weak. The branches look weak as well. And there are no beautiful green leaves. So we go to our doctor. We say, "Doctor, I have had these symptoms that I've never had before. I have high cholesterol. I have erectile dysfunction. I have migraine headaches, depression." And the doctor says, "Well, I've got some pills for that." So we take, for example, menopause. We have a pill for that. Erectile dysfunction, you know, there are 2 flavors. We got Viagra, and we've got other drugs that we can take for that type of disease. Lipitor, high cholesterol. Paxil for depression. Topmax for migraines, etc. We're targeting every symptom with a different pill. Okay? But we think there's a better way to do medicine, and we're going to talk about that right now. This targets the cause. Restorative medicine targets the cause. Now, if you look, we're aiming at the roots, not at the branches anymore. And down at the root level, we have melatonin, testosterone, DHEA, estrogens, progesterone, etc. So what we're doing is looking for where we're deficient, out of balance, or both for the optimal levels. Now remember, the optimal levels for a human being are between the ages of 20 and 29. So what we want to do is restore those levels and those balances to what they would have been between the ages of 20 and 29. We're going to look at this another way as well. Multimodal approach. So on one side, we have the physiology. If we balance it, if we get the correct levels for what they would have been at the optimal age of a human being, we can take care of, meaning treat or prevent, a lot of the symptoms that we see on the right. That's how one gets a healthy tree. That's what we're contending, folks. One cause, again, the cause being deficiencies and imbalances in the physiology as we age. One solution. That solution being balancing the physiology. So here we have a case study, a female, 27 years old. Now, as you can see before, she had quite a list of symptoms. She had daily debilitating migraine headaches. Of course, she was depressed about that. She had extreme fatigue, insomnia, low blood pressure, and she was on 14 different medications. Now, that's interesting because she didn't feel any better. So she has these symptoms, and for her troubles, they give her 14 different medications, some to treat the major symptoms she was having, and others to treat the side effects of the medicine she was taking to treat those symptoms. So she decided to have her blood checked because Dr. Dzugan wrote a book called Your Blood Doesn't Lie and Your Blood Doesn't Lie. And so what we did was we looked at her physiology. And as you can see, wherever there's a red X, she was either deficient, out of balance, or both in all these areas of her physiology. So what we did here on the after portion on the right is we balanced her physiology to its optimal levels. Once we balanced the physiology to the optimal levels, we took care of all of the symptoms, and she was on no drugs. Here we have another case study, a male, 35 years old. His diagnosis before says he had low cholesterol. Now, we've all heard that low cholesterol is good, right? Well, what if low cholesterol isn't good? You may not know this, but cholesterol is one of the most important things in your body. 25% of your total cholesterol is localized in your brain. Cholesterol is in every cell membrane in your body. Your mother's cholesterol went up by 400% when she was carrying you. No doctor ever thought to give your mother Lipitor. Why? Because it would have killed the baby that way. So cholesterol is very important. It's a building block. It repairs things in the body, and it's super important. Now, what we see here, he has low cholesterol, and we're told all the time that low cholesterol is good. Well, it's not good, and a lot of jobs don't get done. You may not know this, but cholesterol makes 60-plus steroidal hormones in your body. Now, these are very important because these hormones are chemical messengers. They go over the body, telling your body what needs to get done, where, and how. As we get older, we lose this. Well, he lost it already. At 35 years old, he had low cholesterol, and for his troubles, he had fatigue, very poor stress control, irritability, anxiety, memory problems, low libido, and frequent infections. So he goes to the doctor, and the doctor said, you know what? The problem is your thyroid. So what we're going to do is going to chemically burn out your thyroid. And he thought to himself, wow, I have a thyroid. Maybe I need it for something. And so he decided to go a different way. And we got to check his blood. And sure enough, as we saw, his blood didn't lie. Everywhere there's a red X, okay, he was either deficient, out of balance, or both for the optimal levels of his body. So what did we do on the right? We restored his physiology. When we restored his physiology, we took care of his symptoms, and he was no longer on medications, and he didn't have his thyroid burned out. Now, how many people know somebody who suffers with migraines? Now, we're going to watch a testimonial of a lady who suffered with migraine headaches for a number of years, along with a number of other health issues. Now, she went to her doctors, and each doctor treated his own specific area for physiology, but she didn't end up feeling any better.
In my 16-year quest to cure my chronic health problems, I had suffered from daily migraine headaches, fibromyalgia, anxiety, depression, gastro problems, gynecological problems, significant hair loss. And I had tried everything that both conventional medicine and holistic medicine had to offer. In fact, I spent over $50,000 looking for a cure, and I continued to get sicker and sicker. And the answer to my prayers was I stumbled upon Dr. Dzugan's first book called The Migraine Cure. I read it, and it made a lot of sense to me. It was the first time anyone had really talked about balancing the hormones. And I had read every other migraine book out there, but this was so different that I was hopeful that this was going to help me. So sure enough, I started this program, and within just a couple of days, I felt some changes in my body, and I felt cautiously optimistic that this could be what I had been searching for so many years. And sure enough, as the time went by, as the weeks and months went by, I started feeling better. I'd say within 6 months, I was 50% better. which in my mind what that meant was I would go to bed at night and not have a migraine 50% of the time. And if I'd never gotten better beyond that, I would have been forever grateful. But what happened was I continued to improve. And by the year anniversary on my program, I was probably 90% better, pain-free. And again, it wasn't just the headaches that were improved. It was the all-over body pain with the fibromyalgia. The depression and anxiety lifted almost immediately. The gynecological problems. I mean, everything just got better. I used to spend my life running from doctor to doctor for all these different problems, which turns out really all had the same root cause. It was a hormonal imbalance. My body was just not capable of producing the level of hormone needed to accomplish all these functions. So once I replaced the hormones, along with these other vitamins and supplements, in a ratios customized for my body based on lab results, I got better. So I guess I love to tell my story to people and give them hope that if you feel like you've tried everything, please try this. And more than anything, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Dzugan, because I get emotional, but he really did change my life. I was pretty close to giving up, and he gave me my life back. And words are not sufficient for the gratitude that I feel every day. So sorry for getting emotional, but I'm a different person today because of him and his program. So thank you.
Now that's interesting. You see, she said, I used to spend my life running from doctor to doctor, okay, for all of these different conditions. But they weren't different conditions. We contend that as she got older, there were changes in her physiology that caused her to have problems she never had before. But these doctors compartmentalized each special section of her body and treated it with their own drugs. We looked at the physiology as a whole, and we treated the person, the system. Where was she deficient? Where was she out of balance, or both? When we restored the physiology, we restored her health. Now, this slide here says Jimmy Kutras. Now, Jimmy Kutras is a very special guy for us here at DzLogyc. Now, if you look at this laundry list of conditions he had on the left side here, it says he has congestive heart failure, high cholesterol, hypertension, type 2 diabetes. He had leukemia, a white blood cell count of 60,000 plus at the time, erectile dysfunction, obesity, a high PSA. Now, gentlemen out there, when I say a high PSA, of course, we know anything over 4 is suspect. Anything over 7 might get you medicated. Jimmy's PSA was 18. He was depressed, fatigued, he had insomnia, short-term memory problems, and he was told by his doctors at a very renowned hospital in Cleveland, which I can't name, but now that I've said Cleveland and renowned hospital, you'll probably figure it out. He was told by these renowned doctors that he had 2 years to live. For his troubles, he was given 18 different prescription drugs. 18. Now, of course, when he heard he had 2 years to live, this was a shock. And he began to freak out a bit. Anybody would. And his family, of course, did too. And his son stumbled upon one of Dr. Dzugan's books. He read it. He said, Dad, I think you should read this. At the end of the day, they've given you 2 years to live doing everything that they said you should do. What do you have to lose? So he gives it a shot. Now, it says here, after dramatic improvement, and you'll see that for a bit in yourselves, for yourselves in a bit there. But what we have here is a PSA going down from 18 to 7, which is still high, but when you're coming down from 18, 7 is excellent. His white blood cell count went from 60,000 plus to 17,000, and he was on no drugs. Now we're going to watch what Jimmy has to say about how optimizing his physiology changed his life.
I can't even tell you how I feel. I feel so good. I can't even remember how bad I felt. But I was always a diabetic. 7 years ago, they detected me as having an inoperable heart, coronary heart disease. I also have leukemia, issues with my prostate. I was on close to 18 prescription pills. I had fatigue, low libido, very tired all the time. I just couldn't do anything. And when they told me at a renowned, well-known hospital in Cleveland that I had the coronary heart disease, that they gave me 2 years to live. It was really a shock to my system. Mentally, first thing that came into my mind, what am I going to do? I got depressed. My family, I tried to get things in order, and never going to see my grandchildren or be able to spend some time with my grandchildren. And so my son told me about this program with Dr. Dzugan, and he says, "Dad, why don't you look into talking to Dr. Dzugan and looking into his program? I think you would really be surprised." And I started talking to Dr. Dzugan and one of the doctors in my local area, and I said, "This sounds pretty interesting." So I got on it, being a little bit pessimistic about it. And next thing you know, a week goes by, and all of a sudden I start feeling better. I mean, I was so used to taking 3-4 nitros just to keep me alive because of all the chest pains and everything I had. Going to my oncologist and going to my family doctor and going to my heart specialist, and everybody telling me all these negative things, and all of a sudden they're telling me, "Boy, you're doing a good job. Boy, you're looking good." I started losing weight. I actually had a lot of energy to want to go and work out, and I started doing the treadmill. I do the treadmill 18 miles an hour, 18 miles a week. I work out with a trainer, and actually I feel like I can run a marathon. I feel so good, and it's unbelievable. I can't believe how well I feel. I feel so good, it actually scares me. It scares me so much that I feel so good. And basically, I want to thank Dr. Dzugan, and especially my son, for finding Dr. Dzugan. And basically, that's it. And thank you very much, and I'm glad that I'm still here to enjoy my family.
As you can see here, this isn't going to get past you, of course. It says, "In loving memory, 2014. Jimmy left us in October of last year. And to be honest with you folks, I actually questioned the wisdom of keeping Jimmy in the presentation. But interestingly enough, I got an answer back. They said, Jimmy made us promise, no matter what happens to me, I want people to know how dramatically my life changed. Jimmy was surviving before he met Dr. Dzugan. Dr. Dzugan helped Jimmy to live, and live healthily. He increased that gap between the lifespan and the health span, and Jimmy enjoyed the last few years of his life on this earth. Now, that's the best anyone can hope for. God bless you, Jimmy. Now, here we have Chubby. Chubby had some complaints, but he wasn't as sick as Jimmy. He wasn't as miserable as Linda. But he did have some lack of energy, some joint pain, some weight gain, low libido. Now, interestingly enough, he went to his doctor a few years ago, Chubby did, and he was having some trouble sleeping. He said, "Doctor, I'm having some trouble sleeping." She said, "Oh, don't worry about that. I've got Ambien for you." Chubby said, "That's great." He takes his Ambien, he goes home, comes back a month later, sees the doctor. The doctor says, "Chubby, how you sleeping?" "You know what, I'm sleeping great. Wow, I've never slept better in my life. But I've got another problem I've never had before." He said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, I'm sort of depressed." She said, "Oh, don't worry about that. That's a side effect of Ambien. I'll give you Zoloft for that." So he takes his Zoloft, his Ambien, he goes home, comes back a month later. The doctor says, "How are you sleeping? How's the depression?" Chubby said, "Sleeping better than ever. My depression gone, but I have another problem I've never had before." She said, "What's that?" He said, "I have erectile dysfunction." "Erectile dysfunction?" He said, "Yeah, I'm not very happy about it. My wife's not either." She said, "Oh, don't worry about the erectile dysfunction. That's a side effect of Zoloft. I'm going to give you Viagra for that." Now, Chubby went back to the doctor 3 more times, and he got on 3 more drugs. So Chubby ended up being on 6 prescription drugs, all because he couldn't sleep. Now, this is indicative of how we treat our bodies at a conventional doctor. These pills that we take, whether they be Lipitor for lowering cholesterol or they be taking Viagra or Cialis for erectile dysfunction, they're not magic. They aren't magic pills. What they do is they affect a change in your blood chemistry that tries to attack a symptom or to alleviate a symptom. But when you go to the doctor, gentlemen, and you have erectile dysfunction, chances are your body didn't stop producing enough Cialis or enough Viagra to make things work right. Your body doesn't produce Viagra. Your body doesn't produce Cialis. Your body produces testosterone. And even if you never went to medical school, even if you never, ever went to medical school, you probably know that. So Chubby comes to us after throwing all those pills away because he didn't really feel that much better at the end of the day. And he told Dr. Dzugan the story I just told you. And Dr. Dzugan said, "Did your doctor ever check your serotonin and melatonin levels?" And Chubby said, "I don't know. I don't even know what those are." He said, "Those are the things in your body that control your sleep patterns." Chubby was surprised. Now, if you look on the left here, Chubby was quite a bit heavier before he came to us. Now, his name is Keith Chubb. He wasn't called Chubby because he was a big guy. He was skinny most of his life until just a few years ago when people stopped asking him why his nickname was Chubby. Well, as you can see, the after picture, Chubby experienced some weight loss, which we do have sometimes as a side effect of optimizing the physiology. If you give the machine what it needs to work correctly, it's going to metabolize better, obviously. And as you can see, Chubby has some more energy, higher sex drive. Now, it says he lost 50 pounds here. That is a misprint, folks. Chubby lost about 75 pounds. Here we have Joan. Now, Joan wasn't as sick as Jimmy, wasn't as miserable as Linda, but she did have some arthritis. She did have some low blood sugar levels. Even if you're not that sick or that miserable, you have the right to feel better if you want to feel better. So she had her blood checked. We found out where she was deficient, where she was out of balance, or both, because these things happen to everyone as we pass the age of 29. Our body starts to decline. Now, it's a slow decline at first, and so we don't notice it right away, but after a number of years, we look back and say, what happened? Well, she started to feel the effects of aging, and so we had her blood checked. We found out where she was deficient, out of balance, or both. We took a medical history, and we crafted a program specifically for her to optimize her physiology. Now, it says today her arthritis pain is much improved, her blood sugar levels are stabilized, and she lost some weight. And she looks pretty happy in that picture. Now here we have Michael Kutris. Now you remember Jimmy C. Well, this is his son, Michael Kutris. Now after Jimmy had some success on the program, Dr. Dzugan and Michael had been talking, and Dr. Dzugan looks to Michael and says, "You know what? I'd like to see your labs because I have a sinking suspicion that you're headed down the same road as your dad." Because Michael was about 283 pounds. He had some anxiety, some arthritis, fatigue. And even though he was only 28 years old, his body was out of balance. So when we looked at his blood, we could see everywhere there's a red X, he was deficient, out of balance, or both. So what did we do? And as you can see here, we detected that estrogen and progesterone were out of balance with each other. And so sometimes you can see these exact type of symptoms in somebody who's estrogen dominant. So what do? We checked his blood, we restored his physiology, and, well, these results speak for themselves. Now, question and answer. Why are so many people interested in restorative medicine? Well, as I talked about earlier, we talked about Lipitor, we talked about Viagra, we talked about Cialis. We know that our body doesn't produce any of these things, so chances are the deficiency or being something out of balance has nothing to do with a foreign agent that we're putting in our body to treat a symptom. So when we hear, hey, maybe it's not Viagra I'm deficient in, maybe it's testosterone, we think that's natural. That makes sense to me. So when we hear a natural option that we can have to treat our body in a different way, of course we're going to be interested in hearing more about it. Why are wellness and prevention the fastest growing sectors of medicine? Well, this is an interesting question. You see, as I said before, we're starting to catch that there are different ways to treat our body, other ways to treat our body that we're maybe not used to, but we're starting to catch some of the science coming out, and we're starting to understand a little better. And once we understand these things, we become interested. And of course, the medical industry senses this interest, and what they want to do is they want to change. Now, it's going to be a slow change because, unfortunately, in the United States, although we're only 5% of the world's population, we are taking over 50% of the world's pharmaceutical drugs. Be that as it may, they're starting to get the message, and in fact, Johns Hopkins is opening up a wellness center in the very near future. Why your doctor may not know about this? Well, there are a couple different reasons. Your doctors do study physiology in medical school, of course, and they know a lot of the basics about how the human body works in this setting. But unfortunately, as we get on in medical school, there are a lot of pharmacological classes, and then you get to residency, and there's a lot of pharmacology taught. And, of course, the standard of care. You have to walk in lockstep with the other physicians, and it's perfectly legal to prescribe Lipitor for high cholesterol, for instance. And so it's not that they don't know about this, it's that that's just not the way medicine's being done right now. Are bioidentical hormones safe? Now, we haven't mentioned the word bioidentical. Linda mentions hormones in her testimony. Bioidentical hormones are hormones that are chemically identical to the hormones that your body produces, okay? So, are they safe? Well, if they're at the right levels for your body, your physiology, of course they're safe because you already have them in your body, so let's hope they're safe. Now, women know a lot more about this than men do because many times women take hormones for birth control reasons, and a lot of these hormones are either synthetic hormones or hormones from other animals. Some hormones are synthesized from horse urine. A lot of women know about this. And other hormones are made by pharmaceutical companies because you can't patent bioidentical hormones. They occur in nature. And so to get a patent on a hormone, you have to take the chemical hormone as it exists in nature and tweak it. So they'll add things to the hormone to make it something that does not occur in nature. Now, your body will receive this hormone and you'll say, wow, that looks a lot like testosterone. So I'm going to try to metabolize it, I guess, because it looks something like testosterone, but it's not testosterone. It's sort of like testosterone. I like to compare this to an analogy using water and vodka. If you drink a liter of vodka instead of a liter of water before going to bed, because they're very similar, you're going to notice a difference tomorrow. Why? Because even though they're very similar, your body metabolizes vodka a bit differently than it metabolizes water. Well, the same thing happens many times with these synthetic hormones. They look a lot like the hormones that you should naturally expect to have in your body, but they're not exactly the same. Thus, they're not metabolized the same, and you get side effects, basically. Are there any side effects to bioidentical hormones? Again, if they're at the right levels for your body, if you're being directed by a physician who knows what they're doing, who can look at your lab results, listen to your updates and concerns about how things are going, this person can level those things for your physiology specifically. And this is very important because these are very powerful agents and you can't just use them willy-nilly. You have to be directed by a physician who knows what they're doing. So if there is a physician involved that does know what they're doing, of course, they're safe. Will restorative medicine take me off my current medication? Well, it certainly did in the case of Jimmy. He got off of 18 different prescription drugs. Think about that. 18. So in a perfect world, what we'd want to do is look at the physiology, figure out where one is out of balance, deficient, or both, right? Restore the physiology, and hopefully eliminate the need for any medication because we've tried to correct the acquired errors of physiology that we get during the aging process. What are the ultimate benefits of restoring one's physiology to its optimal levels? Well, I would say the ultimate benefits of restoring one's physiology, the ultimate benefit is health. What is health if not optimal physiology? Now, folks, you're going to ask a question. Is this for me? Good question. I like to tell a little joke. I say the short answer is yes. The long answer is yes. Why? Because this program is designed for the human body. We're not adding agents to the blood that don't belong in the blood. We're putting back what needs to be there at the correct levels to optimize your physiology. We're not ever saying don't ever use pharmaceutical drugs. We're saying always look to the physiology first. If you have an error in your physiology, look where you're deficient, out of balance, or both, and correct the error. Chances are that acquired error of physiology is going to take care of itself. How our program works, very briefly. We take a medical history, a 250 question plus medical history. We also take a very extensive blood test. 17 different tests for women, 18 different tests for men. The different test being, of course, the PSA. Women have no reason to have a PSA, as we know. So between the medical history and the extensive blood tests, looking for over 70 different markers in the blood, by the way, we send those things, combine them, and send them to DzLogyc. The scientific team at DzLogyc takes a look at these things and designs a program specifically for the person who's been tested. That program is created with your doctor, or if you don't have a doctor that's willing to work with us, we have a network of affiliate physicians all over the world that work with us. We communicate what your program is to you. You start your program, and you update us continuously, and I'm going to talk about why that's important in just 1 second. Why DzLogyc? Now, this slide actually addresses its own question. Dr. Dzugan is the world's leading expert in this type of medicine. In fact, this is Dr. Dzugan speaking at an anti-aging conference in London with all of the bigwigs of the anti-aging movement. He's the author of several books, as you can see. He's offered 5 books. He has another book on the way. Now, your program is monitored closely. It's ongoing, and we do periodic lab work. Why do we do periodic lab work? As your physiology changes, we need to check where you might be deficient, out of balance, and maintain those things. Tweak your program so that your physiology is always in its very best condition. It's like when you were in math class as a kid. You'd solve the problem without showing your work, and of course the teacher would say, I want to see how you got the answer. We like to show our work. We want to hear that you're doing better. It's important that we hear from you that you're doing better, but we also want to be able to see on the lab results. Physiologically, you are better. Your individualized program will be adjusted over time because, as I said, if your blood chemistry changes, the program has to change right along with it. The next step would be to set up an appointment, give us a call. Please do, because we're waiting for you to call us. We want to hear from you. And we have a little prayer here. Now, a lot of people know this prayer in a different context. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now that we have a little bit of knowledge, we can apply that knowledge. It becomes wisdom. If you know there's a train coming down a track at you, now that you see that train, you can step off the track. Now it says thank you. I'm going to leave you with the final thought. People say, Chris, my doctor's smart. My doctor takes great care of me. That may be true. They even say, Chris, my doctor's responsible for my health. That's not true. You're responsible for your health. You are the one living your life. You're the one with your human body, and you have the most vested interest in taking care of your health. Now, people say, Chris, but my doctor's smarter than me. That's not necessarily true. Your doctor may have gone to medical school. He or she may have read different books and had a different career path than you. But that doesn't mean they're smarter than you, and I can prove it. Folks, what do they call the person that graduates at the very bottom of their class in medical school? What title does he or she walk out of that building with? They're called doctor. What do they call the person that graduates at the top of their class? They call that person Dr. Dzugan. Thank you guys very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and we hope to hear from you soon.